In late 2024, a chill descended upon the long-standing friendship between Canada and the United States. President Donald Trump, having secured his return to the White House, unleashed a storm of economic threats that sent shockwaves across the northern border. He proposed staggering 25% tariffs on most Canadian goods and a 10% tariff on energy products, a move that could cripple industries and disrupt the lives of millions. The justification for these measures seemed thin, citing minor issues like fentanyl trafficking, which data showed was not a significant problem on the Canada-US border. This rhetoric created a deep sense of unease and uncertainty for Canadians, who suddenly found their nation's economic stability hanging in the balance. The threats from Washington were not just economic, they carried a tone that many Canadians found deeply unsettling. President Trump publicly mused about annexing Canada, suggesting it could become part of the United States. On his social media platform, he downplayed the immense value of the trade relationship, claiming the US didn't truly need anything from its northern neighbor. This narrative ignored the hundreds of billions of dollars in integrated trade, from cars and aluminum to lumber and energy, that formed the backbone of both economies. For many Canadians, this wasn't just a trade dispute. It felt like a challenge to their very sovereignty and national identity, sparking worry in households from coast to coast. The initial reaction across Canada was one of profound concern. The proposed tariffs were scheduled to take effect in early February 2025, leaving little time to prepare for a potential economic catastrophe. The news dominated headlines, and conversations in coffee shops and boardrooms alike were filled with anxiety. The threat was so severe that it caused visible cracks within the Canadian government itself. In a dramatic turn of events in December 2024, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland resigned over disagreements with then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on the best strategy to counter the looming crisis. This high-profile departure underscored the gravity of the situation and the immense pressure facing Canada's leaders. As the deadline approached, a temporary 30-day pause was announced after Canada and Mexico agreed to discussions on border security. However, this did little to calm the underlying fears. The pause felt more like a brief reprieve than a lasting solution. It became clear to everyone that this was not a passing political squall, but a fundamental challenge to Canada's place in the world. The country stood at a crossroads, forced to decide how it would respond to the aggressive posture of its closest ally. The question on everyone's mind was whether Canada would bend to the pressure or find the strength to stand its ground against the economic giant next door. Faced with an unprecedented economic threat, Canada did not panic. Instead of fracturing under the immense pressure, the nation rallied together in a remarkable display of unity. Political divisions that often defined public discourse began to fade into the background, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. The Team Canada approach, a strategy that had been used in past trade disputes, was revived with newfound urgency. It was a powerful declaration that when the country's core interests were at stake, Canadians would speak with one voice. This unified front would become the nation's greatest asset in the difficult months that followed. The Team Canada strategy was a comprehensive effort to bring all corners of society together. It wasn't just about politicians in Ottawa. Provincial premiers from across the political spectrum set aside their differences to coordinate a national response. They joined forces with business leaders whose supply chains and profits were on the line, and labor unions who represented the workers whose jobs were most at risk. This coalition created a powerful, unified front, sending a clear message to Washington that the pressure campaign would not easily divide their country. This collaborative spirit was a testament to the nation's resilience and its deep-seated belief in collective action during times of crisis. This sense of unity extended beyond the halls of power and into communities across the country. A wave of patriotism swept the nation, fueled by what many saw as disrespectful rhetoric from the US administration. Canadians began to express their solidarity in small but meaningful ways. The booing of the US national anthem at hockey games became a symbolic act of defiance, while grassroots campaigns encouraging citizens to buy Canadian products and boycott American goods gained significant traction. This groundswell of public support reinforced the government's resolve, showing that the Team Canada spirit was alive and well among everyday people who were proud of their independence. The political landscape itself was reshaped by this national mood. The tariff crisis became a central issue in the April 2025 federal election, and the public's desire for strong, unwavering leadership was clear. Mark Carney, a former governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, was elected Prime Minister, partly on his promise to stand firm against US pressure. His victory was a direct reflection of the nation's unified stance. Canadians had chosen a leader they believed could navigate the storm with a steady hand, signaling that the Team Canada approach was not just a temporary strategy, but a new, more confident national posture. With a united front established at home, Canada's new government, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, embarked on a strategy that was both diplomatic and firm. The approach was not to escalate the conflict recklessly, but to respond with calm, calculated precision. In his first meeting with President Trump in May 2025, Carney delivered a direct and unambiguous message. When confronted with Trump's suggestions of annexation, Carney stated plainly, "Canada is not for sale, won't be for sale ever." This moment of clear-eyed diplomacy set the tone for the negotiations, demonstrating that Canada would not be intimidated and would engage as a sovereign equal, not a subordinate. Beyond direct talks, Canada prepared a powerful tool of its own targeted retaliatory tariffs. This was not a blunt instrument designed to inflict maximum damage, but a carefully calibrated list of US goods. Canadian strategists identified products that were politically sensitive in the United States, often originating from key electoral districts of influential American politicians. The goal was not to start an all-out trade war, but to create strategic pressure within the US political system. By making the economic consequences of the tariffs felt in specific regions, Canada aimed to build an internal American coalition of voices advocating for a return to reason and free trade. This strategy of smart retaliation showed that Canada had done its homework. It signaled to the Trump administration that Canadians were not just passive recipients of economic policy, but were prepared to use their own leverage intelligently. The threat of these counter-tariffs, which were coordinated with similar plans from Mexico, played a crucial role in bringing the US to the negotiating table and securing the initial 30-day pause. It was a classic display of using economic statecraft not to destroy, but to persuade. Canada demonstrated that it understood the intricate dance of international trade and was ready to lead with a firm but measured step. Ultimately, this blend of direct diplomacy and strategic economic pressure proved to be surprisingly effective. President Trump, who had expected a quick capitulation from a smaller trading partner, was met with unexpected and unified resistance. The Canadian response was not one of anger or panic, but of quiet, determined strength. The government made it clear that while it valued its relationship with the United States, it would not sacrifice its economic interests or national sovereignty. This firm stance laid the groundwork for a resolution that would respect Canada's position and, in the process, force the world to see the nation in a new, more confident light. The tariff crisis served as a profound wake-up call for Canada. For decades, the nation had enjoyed a comfortable but heavily dependent economic relationship with the United States. The shock of 2025 forced a national reckoning, revealing the deep vulnerabilities of relying so heavily on a single trading partner. In response, the Canadian government and private sector began an ambitious and historic pivot. A new national strategy was forged, focusing on economic diversification and self-reliance. Significant investments were directed toward nurturing new and emerging industries, from clean technology and advanced manufacturing to artificial intelligence, reducing the country's reliance on traditional sectors vulnerable to US trade actions. A key pillar of this new strategy was the aggressive pursuit of new trade partners. Canada turned its attention to the fast-growing markets of Asia, Europe, and South America, seeking to build stronger economic bridges across the globe. Diplomats and trade missions were dispatched to finalize and expand agreements with other nations, opening up new opportunities for Canadian exporters. This deliberate effort to diversify was not just about finding new customers, it was a long-term plan to rebalance Canada's economic footprint in the world. The goal was to ensure that the nation's prosperity would never again be held hostage by the political whims of a single country, no matter how close a friend. To support this economic transformation, Canada made substantial investments in its own people. Recognizing that a shift in industries required a shift in skills, the government launched large-scale worker retraining programs. These initiatives were designed to help Canadians transition from traditional jobs to the high-demand roles of the new economy. By equipping its workforce with future-proof skills, Canada was not just weathering the storm, but actively building a more resilient and adaptable economic foundation. This focus on human capital was a powerful statement that the country's greatest resource was its own citizens, and investing in them was the surest path to long-term strength. In the end, what began as a moment of crisis became a catalyst for profound and positive change. The challenge posed by the Trump administration forced Canada to become stronger, more innovative, and more independent. The nation emerged from the tariff clash not weakened, but emboldened. Canadians had faced down a formidable challenge and discovered a deeper well of resilience and unity than many thought possible. The experience fostered a new sense of national confidence and a clearer vision of Canada's role in the 21st century as a confident sovereign nation ready to forge its own path on the world stage.